You're listening to the Peasinner Network. For more great podcasts, go to peasinner.com.au.
Spoiler alert. I mean, honestly, if you listen to this podcast, spoilers.
Spoilers.
Are we sitting comfortably? Right. Okay. Brilliant. What were we talking about?
Genesis of the Daleks.
Genesis of the Daleks. Fuck. Why do you put up with me? People of the universe, please attend carefully. The message which follows is of vital importance to you all. We present to you a case study of one of the most dangerous minds in the universe. A history of the lives and times of the renegade Time Lord known as the Master.
The Master. Call me Master.
The choice is simple. Join us and continue listening, or face total annihilation.
Listen.
They are the Master, and you will obey them.
You will obey me.
Please attend carefully. Hello and welcome to Please Attend Carefully, the Doctor Who podcast about the most magisterial of malefactors. I'm Ciarán Moffatt.
And I'm Amber Patrick.
And each week we bring you a chapter from the lives and times of the renegade Time Lord known universally as the Master. This week we will be looking at, and it's our very first two-parter, this week is the first half of the War Master Anti-Genesis box set from 2019. So we will be looking at the audio stories From the Flames by Nicholas Briggs and The Master's Dalek Plan by Alan Barnes, both of them directed by, with any luck, my future husband, Scott Hancock.
Oh, sorry, Claire, he's leaving you.
Right. Amber, tell us what it's about.
Okay, well, the Master fakes his own death, a ruse to trick the Time Lords into bringing him back to Gallifrey. Once inside the capital, his deceit continues. Finding his way to the center of the Matrix where forbidden knowledge is kept, Narvin unwittingly leads him to the Genesis codes. Leaving Gallifrey and heading to Skaro, the Master is primed to take over from Davros and create his own Dalek Genesis.
Ooh. Okay, so for the kids that don't know, because I feel like there might be some like New Who exclusive watchers who don't know what Genesis of the Daleks is. Maybe. I mean,
It is probably the most famous classic Who story.
I've heard such people exist. Oh well. I'm in a funny mood today. Okay.
Oh, strap in, it's not the cursed episode.
So Genesis of the Daleks is a Fourth Doctor story from the Fourth Doctor's very first season. That is such a stacked season, by the way. It's like got Ark in Space. It's got Revenge of the Cybermen. One of my favourite stories.
Nice.
Oh,
yes,
the
of
one
course.
that you keep telling me off
mentioning about.
referencing. So yes, Genesis of the Daleks is written by Terry Nation and is about the creation of the Daleks. It was the very first introduction of Davros, the creator of the Daleks. We're not going to go into Davros right now. He comes up, but we'll scoot straight past that. This is the linchpin point of Doctor Who, right? Because they keep coming back to it.
Yes. So in that original episode, the Fourth Doctor had the choice to kill all the Daleks and stop them being created or let them all live.
Yeah.
So that's why it's such an integral moment, because it's like, well, what if you had that choice?
And since then it's been built upon. So like Russell T Davies made it that this was the point that started the Time War. Like, because the Time Lords, who it's sort of coded, Genesis of the Daleks features a random Time Lord in a random black snood, as I pointed out before, who tells the Doctor that he must either stop the Daleks being created or have them turn into something less dangerous, basically. And this was sort of coded as being the Celestial Intervention Agency before Romana took it over. But we're getting into heavy lore there. The famous scene, isn't it? It's the famous scene of the Doctor with the two wires. He's got a bomb rigged up. And if if I touch these two wires together, have I the right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, whole galaxies will become allies because of the Daleks and things like that. And you've got Sarah Jane on one shoulder telling him to do it, and Harry on the other shoulder going, "Oh, I don't know." And you've just got this angel demon thing going. So this has been referenced time and time again. I mean, in this season we did the Magician's
I was going to
Apprentice.
say, yeah. Where if you could go back and kill Child Davros, would you do it? And he never does. He goes back, and obviously we in our previous episode, he saves him.
Yeah, and I don't think we actually addressed the fact in that story that what the Doctor did in that story is essentially what he was asked to do in Genesis of the Daleks.
Yeah.
He does make the Daleks, does give them a weakness. He gives them mercy. But that's in that story.
Oh, yeah. Here comes dramatic with a capital D Master to not only kill this child, but take their life for himself.
Let's start at the beginning. The story starts with the Master doing some shady things on this planet, which, you know, we won't go into too many details on that. And so the Master sends a message to Gallifrey saying, "I'm dying. Oh,
Yes.
I repent of my sins." And then he turns up. And Narvin goes, no, we're not having this. Get rid of him completely. And Narvin says to his weirdly creepy servant, Kraslus, get rid of the body completely. Like, I want him completely gone from the universe. And what does he use?
Infernal something.
The infernal toxicant.
Also, I just want to say, not only does he send out this really dramatic message of "I'm dying," he sends it to every frequency on Gallifrey, so all their comms get jammed up by his dying words.
Yeah, every single Time Lord on Gallifrey is just like, heard it.
Oh, the Master's dying? What's new?
Oh, yeah. Because he's done this before. I mean, look at the Deadly Assassin.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was dying then. The Master's body is destroyed by the infernal toxicant, which burns him down to the very Artron energy.
Do you think, because I think he would, that the Master would love to go to his own funeral and sit in the front row in like black with like a veil and like weep and sob as his photos at the front of the room?
I'm not. Is he going to be the sitting in the front row sort, or is he going to be the one like laying there in the coffin, listening, going, "Yeah"?
Well, both of them.
Both of them. Everyone at the funeral is an incarnation of the Master.
Yeah.
There's actually a Big Finish story like that. Only it's Drax. It's not the Master. It's Drax. Okay, so the Master is supposedly dead and supposedly being burned forever in eternal hellfire.
Not coming back. Definitely gone. Don't worry. You can all go about your day.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong. But not for long. And then Kraslus, who it turns out is obviously the Master's servant because he's walking around going,
Big Baldric vibes with Kraslus.
Yeah, it's very silly.
Oh, Master, reborn. I knew I could rely on you, Kraslus.
Yes, Master.
Yes, Master. I do so love to hear those beautiful words.
The Master awakens from his death
Yeah.
to reveal that he isn't dead. And he's talking to Kraslus, and he's like, "Oh, is this your hovel, Kraslus?" That's
He
like,
also says, "Please tell me you told him it was the infernal toxicant."
yeah, and he's just making sure the script that he wrote was followed. And I like him being like, "Now, there's a very specific script I need you to follow, Kraslus."
Yes. But then apparently Kraslus, I say apparently to foreshadow what's going to happen, goes and finds Narvin, and Narvin's like, "What are you doing above stairs?"
Yes.
Get down, get back. I don't want anyone to see me with you. And Kraslus goes, I found something in his TARDIS that said something about the anti-Genesis codes. And Narvin's like, quick, I must immediately go and check on this.
I really need you to slow down because you are skipping, like,
I know.
you're not letting me get in anything.
It's just so much fun.
I know, but there's more fun to be had. Like, we haven't even said the reason. So he fakes his death with poison from a dragon, which he slays in the first scene
Yeah.
to intake in its poison to make him appear dead.
Yep.
which is absolutely just like, oh, just slay this dragon. But yes, what are you doing above here?
Apparently Kraslus is above stairs. Quick, we must go. Quick, through my door into the Matrix. You have one?
Yeah, it's the equivalent of Batman and Robin getting on fire poles and like going into the Batcave. Quick, into the Matrix.
So they just go into the Matrix, and they go into a partitioned part of the Matrix. I like this whole bit because Narvin is not as smart as he thinks he is.
No. And I do love Kraslus is like talking about the Master, and Narvin's like, do I detect some anti-hero worship?
Yes.
And I was like, just fucking call out the podcast, Narvin. God damn. It's just coming for us.
We're renaming the podcast Anti-Hero Worship.
And he says we don't want acolytes coming out of the woodwork to mourn their martyr. And I was like, oh, God, Narvin, stop it.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? So President Livia...
Yeah.
She suggests using the Master as a martyr to get people on side in the Time War. And Narvin's like, no.
Yeah. I also love Livia says, don't breathe on me, Narvin. And I was like, fucking get him, Livia. And it was at this point where I was like, what is going on in this episode?
It's so much fun.
It's so over the top. All the characters are just being dramatic and...
Well, that's Gallifrey, right? That's just Gallifrey.
They all think they're the main character.
They do. But massive main character energy. So Narvin and possibly Kraslus, you know who it is by this point, they're in the Matrix and they get trapped for like hundreds of years.
They're trapped in the Matrix because they're going into an area where the forbidden knowledge is kept because...
They need to find if the Master did access the anti-Genesis
yes,
codes.
And Narvin knows. He can tell from the terminal in his office that they haven't been accessed. He knows before he goes in there. Well, they haven't been tampered with. The security system says that they're still there.
Yeah,
and
but let's face it, the Master's MO is the Master's MO, right?
Yeah, so he needs to go in there and check to definitely make sure that they haven't been tampered with. But the Matrix, because it's such forbidden knowledge, traps them to try and stop them, make them forget what info they're going in there.
Narvin put those traps in there.
Yeah.
But he can't turn them off.
Yeah, so he's got to just be
So there's horrible creatures that are attacking them, and they end up living in this village in the Matrix.
Yeah, with like fruit stalls and...
Yeah, millennia. Narvin's lying on a bed going,
Oh, yeah, he's being dramatic as well. And yeah, like Kraslus comes in and it's like, oh, that old woman who sells fruit out there. She said she was a girl when we first arrived.
He is spoon feeding Narvin. He's just like, Narvin, work it out. Come on, keep up, buddy. And eventually they work out that they're trapped in the Matrix, and he does the fourth Doctor thing from the Deadly Assassins. I reject it. I deny it.
Yeah, and it's so weird because you're like, okay, so Narvin and really the Master, dun dun dun, as disguised as Kraslus, have lived together in here for a millennia together. Like,
but I think what's wonderfully shown there is that the Master playing the role of Kraslus is almost unaffected by the whole thing because he has been in the Matrix before. He knows how to survive in the Matrix.
I think as we mentioned in the last episode, get him out. He's always in there. It's like you get a broom.
Scratching.
President Livia's on the outside and she can see that they've entered.
Yes.
But she doesn't know it's the Master.
She's just like, and she, like everyone else, is just like, Narvin has a door to the Matrix?
Yeah, and we find out that time is not passing that fast outside.
It's been 3 minutes for them and a millennia for them inside. So anyway, they get through and Narvin finds the anti-Genesis codes and he's like, nothing's wrong. No one's taken them. And then the Master goes, mwahaha, but I shall do that now. Thank you very much. You've fallen for my plan. Mwahaha. And then the best bit is Narvin having to explain to Livia. She's like, why were you in the Matrix? I had to check to see whether the Master had stolen the anti-Genesis codes. And had he? Well.
Yeah. Yes. Narvin has to admit that, no, he's been tricked. But Narvin, come on. Right from the start. Because when Kraslus was like, oh, I was looking through the Master's TARDIS and found his confidential files where he revealed he had these. And
I read his diary and he said,
yeah, but I like the idea that it's like, I was looking through his many filing cabinet.
oh, you and your bloody filing cabinets in the TARDIS.
We know, canon, they're in there. But yes, this was all a ruse.
I don't know what this episode is, but
It's really, the pacing is chaotic.
I mean hours.
Oh. And then, yes, the Master never had the files. It was all a trick, and Narvin fell hook, line, and sinker because of the drama. The drama of it all. It's weird because you would think that if he was that confident in himself and in Gallifrey and his home turf, that when he sees that his security system says no one's touched the codes, he would know and be confident to say, nope, no one's touched them.
Yeah.
This is a trick, but he's not. He's fooled. But he should know that his system is in place. Like, the Master, I guess, just gets into his head.
Yeah. I mean, that's what the Master does.
Yeah.
I wish I'd seen his face when you utter those words.
We should mention at this point that during this episode, an assault on a planet means that this planet is, by the Daleks, means that this planet is destroyed. And a Time Lord known as Lamarius, she tries to stop this from ever happening. And she's arrested by the High Council because fucking with time that much is a criminal event. You know, fucking with time just a little bit that's how you get medals in the Time War, but a lot, you're bad.
Especially because she does it for the good of her family that were on the planet.
Yes.
Not for, like, the greater war effort.
The greater good.
Yeah, not because of that. She just, her wife and child are down there, so.
Yep. See, okay, I'm going to talk about something about Chibnall that really annoyed me now. Okay, so in The Power of the Doctor, Chibnall says, the greatest punishment the Time Lords ever gave out was forced regeneration. No, it wasn't. It's dematerialization. And that is something that is pointed out frequently in the classic series, most notably in Arc of Infinity. So, and this is what Lamarius is sentenced to. She is sentenced to being dematerialized, her atoms scattered. And so, but basically what Narvin's doing is anyone useful that he can pocket away and use later. He says of Lamarius, I might need someone with unchecked rage. And so he catches her from the dematerialization and then puts her in suspended animation. And then once the Master's done his whole thing, Narvin's just like, well, that was a freebie. We'll just get Lamarius out. Lamarius, you've been gone for millennia. Like 5 minutes. She's been gone like 5 minutes. But of course they can't tell her that, because if they tell her that, then she will try and go and try and negate the effects of the bomb that killed her family.
Yeah.
So they're like, you are now an assassin. You must go and find and kill the Master. Wear this time ring that will also dematerialize you if you do anything wrong. If you're possibly getting captured, you can't be questioned. We're just going to kill you, all right? So yeah, she's off on a one-way trip to try and kill the Master, because the Master has stolen the anti-Genesis codes. The codes which will get him right to the place where the Daleks were created. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, so now he can, just to bring the tone down.
Yeah, sorry.
But no, that's fine. I mean, as in, you were like all heavy, and I'm just like, he
Yeah,
goes to Ciarán.
Yeah, he goes. It's very hard to sort of bring out how important this is. Like, the Time Lords and the Daleks have both basically gone. It's mutually assured destruction. Neither the Time Lords nor the Daleks will go back to the point where the opposite civilization was at its creation and stop it. Like, they won't stop the other civilization before it started, because that they know that then they would go back and do that.
Yeah.
So, like, no one is to go back to the point where the Daleks were created and try and stop it. The Master's like, I'm going to go. And so he's on Skaro, and these things allow him to just casually walk through.
Well, I think the codes, they never really tell us exactly what the codes are.
Yeah.
But I think the codes tell him very specific times and locations of things, so that, you know, he can dematerialize his TARDIS right at the right time where he needs to be. He gets arrested though straight away,
but that's to his plan.
Yes,
like, he knows
exactly.
to get arrested, kind of like the Master in, again, Power of the Doctor, where the Master's got the Siberiad in his head, or Siberium. I can't remember which one it is. Birium, thank you. In his head, and so he's like 4 moves ahead, so he knows exactly where to go. He knows when he gets into the cell, and then he knows he's got a transmitter there. And so he basically has this knowledge of exactly where to stand, where to walk, who to talk to. And it's like, everything he does is the right thing to do.
Yeah, so he goes into he gets arrested. So he's in this transport going towards a facility, but then it gets bombed because we're in a war and it kills the guard.
Yep.
And so then he gets the guard's security pass, but the photo's burnt off. So
it's perfect.
yeah,
right?
So now he can get into secure Khaled locations.
Yes.
And so he walks in there and then he's like, "Hello, I'm here to see my nephew Davros. Bring him out of his secure bunker to me, please. Bring him up here to reception to meet me."
They're in a lovely meeting room with a beautiful window with a view of the really awful Skaro
battlefield.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Davros comes in. And
he's like a teenager.
It's like
almost.
a young man.
Yeah.
So, he's a young man, so it is before his it is before his accident.
Which is about to happen.
Yeah.
This is the codes have led him to the point where there's a bomb's about to drop on this facility, but normally Davros would be down in his secure bunker.
Yeah, and as the master says, if you were in your secure bunker, you wouldn't die. You would just be horribly scarred, and you would have to invent something to keep you alive. And he's just like, unfortunately, you're in this room with me, the weakest room in the building, and the bomb's about to drop. And unfortunately, with you being in here, you're probably going to die. And Davros is like, what? You what?
Yeah, and that's it. The bomb drops.
Yep.
And Davros is dead.
Yes.
And the master's like, "Oh, Davros, no, oh, my nephew. Oh, it is like the guards come in and are like, "Oh, we can't find him in the rubble." And again, dramatic. He's he's acting it up, and then he's like, "Anyway, where's his science lab? Where's his?"
Yeah. I'm his uncle, and so therefore that means I inherit his work.
Yeah,
I guess
I'm just gonna go down there now and
everything he knows he got from me,
Yeah,
and that's the end of episode 1. You find out that the master has done this purely to get to the point where he can kill Davros and replace him.
Yes, it ends on a scene that I love, and it's a funeral for all those who died in this bombing. And he reads out the names of some people, and then he takes a break, and he's like, "The rest we were unable to identify, but we thank them for their service."
Well, the list of names he reads out are characters from Genesis the Daleks, including, I was very upset to hear, Nida. I would have loved to have heard Nida being the War Master's right-hand man. That's a match made in heaven. It really is.
And so they're having this funeral, and it ends fantastically where he's like, "Goodbye, Davros." And then he sort of leans into someone and's like, "Do we have any appropriate music to play out on this funeral?"
Yes.
And then someone's like, "No." And he's like, "Oh, what a pity." And then it plays his
theme music.
And I was like, "Oh, wow, perfect." I do like the idea because when he was being tortured in The Master of Kalos, he was like, "Can we put on some music or an audiobook to pass the time, please?" So he likes a tune while he works.
I wonder, do we have any suitable music, perhaps? No? Pity. It might have lifted our spirits.
The next story picks up, and Lemarius is on Skaro, and unfortunately has found the Master's TARDIS and immediately got attacked by sentient barbed wire.
It's horrific.
It is described really, really horrifically, and you get the image. And I think at this point I want to talk about the war on Skaro. So that is a major part of Genesis of the Daleks. It is a major part of the Daleks going forward. So the whole idea of this war on Skaro is that the war between the Khaleds and the Thals has been raging for so long. We're talking thousands of years. One of the main points in Genesis of the Daleks is that it's been going so long that technology is going backwards because they're literally running out of resources. They started with laser guns, and now they're using bows and arrows. And you even see that in The Magician's Apprentice. You see someone using a bow and arrow at a drone that's going overhead. And the weapons that have been created are so, weird is the best way to they're weird and terrifying. Like the hand mines, the hands that have got the eyes in them that grab your ankle and pull you underground. And this sentient barbed wire, which the more you move, the more it wraps around and crawls up your body. And the mutations that have come out of it.
The mutos.
Yes, the mutos. All these Some of them are just, slightly mutated. Others of them are basically werewolves, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
And I mean, the mutations is where Davros got the idea for the Daleks. He wanted to mutate the Khaleds to the point where they could be put inside mobile tanks and they would be safe.
I'm not an animal for vivisection.
My dear Elrond, that's why I came to retrieve you. It's the rest of the creatures in this infirmary who are destined to donate their bodies to science.
What?
So, Lemarius is being tied up by this barbed wire and a muto that sounds like a parrot.
R4.
After an exchange, saves her.
Yeah, this character is... I don't care much for this B-plot, but this character is interesting because the only empathy he seems to have, because, he lives out in the wasteland of Skaro, the only empathy he has is people's families.
Yes.
So this woman mentions she has a family that she's trying to get back to, and that softens him. Yeah. And so he helps her.
Yeah. So while they're going through the wilderness, trying to get to Davros, well, not Davros, sorry. That's right. There's that great line. Lemarius has said that her job is to kill someone. And R4 says, oh, you're here to kill Davros. And she's like, I think I'm a bit late for that.
Yeah.
So the Master is now getting around in Davros's chair.
Does he even need to, or is he just doing it for the bit?
He's just doing it for the bit.
Yeah,
It's commitment to the bit.
You had, as a matter of fact, I'm rather more speedy than I was before.
It's very ableist. It's very mean to disabled people. But so he's just
lazy. He's
just in the chair getting around. I think what I like about this episode is basically a bunch of scenes, which I like. And I also like the fact that it shows us the creation of the Daleks. Obviously, the Master's doing it now instead of Davros. But we're seeing it in the sort of step-by-step way that we didn't see in the show. And it's actually quite gruesome. Everyone else gets turned into, mutants in that place, but he takes Elrond out. But then he gives Elrond... Because Elrond's blind. He gives him a Dalek eyepiece purely so he can hypnotize him.
Yeah.
And the thing that's most gruesome about that is he's just he attaches the Dalek eyepiece to his... he wires this into the guy's brain and he's like, oh, I can see. I can't close my eyes. The light hurts my eyes. I can't close them. And you're like, is this what Daleks are feeling? All the time?
Yeah.
They can't close their eye?
And his answer to that is oh, well, you could just put your hand over the eye stalk.
Yeah. And if you're a Dalek, you can't.
Yeah.
So yeah, but he's called Elrond, which I just think is I know there's only so many syllables. There's only so many different syllables. But that seemed like a very particular choice.
Why?
Elrond? Lord of the Rings? Elrond of Rivendell? Have you not seen Lord of the Rings?
Of course I have. I don't understand why that's why you're making... I don't get why you're making that connection. As in why Elrond would...
Don't you just think it's weird that it's such a well-known name and then it's... No? Okay, that's just me then. Write in, do you think it is odd that this character is called Elrond?
Yeah, I didn't even...
Oh, okay, you didn't even do that. I swear... No. Okay, just me then. Just me. All right, let's get back on track. Yeah, so basically they go and get more scientific people and Elrond becomes the very first Dalek. So that the Master unveiled the Mark III travel machine. The Master... we should point out, is calling himself Sorvad.
Yeah, which is just Davros.
Backwards, yeah.
Claims that Davros was named after him too.
Well, that becomes a plot point later on, towards the end of the episode, where they sort of write into that. They say, it's an old tradition among Khaleds to name a child after someone and spell their name backwards or use an anagram or something, which I think is very sweet in a way, the way they've written that, and gives it a bit of it gives you a reason as to why they're called Daleks.
Yes, and I do like that he does unveil to them, this is a Dalek, get it? Yeah. Get it? And they sort of are like, but that's not what Khaled is backwards.
Yeah, no, there's one guy who's just like, no, that would be Dalek, not Dalek. And the Master's like, And you can just hear in that, it's just you're going to be a Dalek soon.
Yes.
It's backwards. It's Khaled backwards.
No, it isn't.
I'm sorry?
Khaled backwards is Dalek, not Dalek. You should call your travel machine a Dalek.
My technician, Ciarán, you really are most observant.
So he basically gets what he calls the Khaled elite. I guess we're to assume these are the, the heads of that society.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones he wants to turn first.
Yeah.
Because then it will be easier to turn the rest of the population.
Yes. Well, what he does is the master cheats, and he uses basically a replicator from his TARDIS that creates copies of the Daleks. And he even says, look, these aren't going to last very long. They will break down molecularly soon, but I just need them for long enough to convert everyone else. Because the Dalek guns aren't set to kill. They're currently set to mutate. So every Khaled they meet, they fire and they turn within a few minutes into a Dalek mutant.
Yes, those little... yeah, they can't talk anymore. And it's got
It's very squelchy, and it's very... One of my things that makes me very uncomfortable is like glottal noises.
Mm-hmm.
Like that sound like someone's choking. That makes me very uncomfortable. So listening to this was making me go just a bit...
And it's got one of my favorite lines in the whole audio is that, so he's got, one of them and he gets it into its new Dalek Mark III travel machine casing. And he's like, great. Are you writhing comfortably?
Yes, such a good line.
Or it might be wriggling.
No, I think it is writhing. It might be wriggling.
Wriggling.
It is wriggling.
Are
sorry.
you wriggling comfortably? Which, is also great. Good. Then just think, I want my casing to close. And then it's like, zzz, and it closes up.
Which again is a reference to we've seen that before in the Magician's Apprentice, and the Witch's Familiar.
Yes. And then he's like, so how do you feel or something? And we hear the voice for the first time.
Yep.
Which is fantastic.
You are the master. You are the creator of the Daleks.
And you will obey me.
So we're seeing, as you say, step by step, this process. First, it was just an eye stalk in one of them.
Yep.
Then he makes one of them just a the Khaled mutant. And then he puts it inside the machine for the first time. We hear the voice for the first time.
Yeah.
And then he starts giving them all numbers.
Yeah, you can see that it's a process. And that's the thing. The one that was called Elrond, he just did it and then sent it off to go and get, to mutate more people. And he comes back on the thing, undesignated Dalek. You're number 1 now.
Yeah. Don't worry, 2 and 7 are on their way to help you.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's really fun and quite eerie to see that process. If it wasn't all the Khaleds at once went, yes, we need to do this.
Mm-hmm.
It was brute force a few, and then they'll, exponential return will happen.
It is the Dalek pyramid scheme.
Dalek MLM.
Yeah, right. So all the while, Lemarius is with R4, and they get captured by some Thals. The Thals start scanning them and deem that they're both mutos because Lemarius has 2 hearts, and they just assume that that's a mutation.
Yeah.
But then they try and use the scanner on R4, which unfortunately activates his mutation, which is, surprise, he's basically a werewolf.
Yeah, so bizarre.
Yeah, he gets, his skeleton enlarges, and he gets spines down his back, and his, fingers retract, leaving his claws out. And a couple of the Thals get scratched. And so R4 and Lemarius leg it out.
Yeah, she manages to empathize with him again.
Yeah.
And get him to recognize that she is a friend, not to kill. I did enjoy their relationship more as it went along. And so they get back out into the wasteland.
Yeah. And then eventually they make their way to this Khaled bunker.
I love there's a point where Lemarius is trying to convince him, we have to stop this. Mm-hmm. You've got to come with me, because I think they can't traverse the wasteland, but the mutos leave signals and signs around to tell other mutos don't cross this place when it's dark, or certain environmental things. So they have their own language that they marker out around the place. So she's like, okay, I need you to show me how to get there. And he's like, no, you're just war. And she's like, no, I'm stopping the war. And he's like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
You are war. And he has, we'll put it in, but he has this fantastic speech that really undercuts, You'll just bring more war. There's never
Yeah.
no war. It's really
And-
beautiful.
End war. War's like air, fire, water. War just is. War's all there's ever been. No one can end war.
That goes back to what I was saying about the Khaled-Thal War. It has been going on forever, as far as they're concerned. Like 1,000 years is basically, you assume that this is what your planet is now. And that's also what the Time War feels like. They've been fucking around with time so much that it's almost impossible to see a way through it without war, basically. I'd also like to point out that the Thals who were scratched by R4, they get scanned afterwards, and they're like, all right, we're ready to go back to work. No, you're not. You've been mutated by his scratch. And just that really, really sad and bleak line. It's just like, don't worry, you've still got some way to help the war effort. And one of them goes, yes, well, you need someone to clear out the minefields, don't you? I think that's also there to show us the feeling on Skaro about mutation.
Yeah.
Like, mutation is completely abhorrent. And the only one who doesn't see it as such, well, it's Davros, but now it's the Master
Yeah.
who is mutating people. Because they point out, like, the creatures that live on Skaro now, there's a type of flower that roots itself in metal because it has evolved to do that by the mutations because its soil is totally barren. There's a type of land, like, oyster, that the one that
Yes.
Harry gets his foot stuck in Genesis the Daleks, that shell is harder than steel.
Yeah, it can withstand nuclear blasts because
Yeah.
it's had to evolve that way because of the war. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's those types of birds, these gulls, which are so intelligent that they can track enemy movements behind the lines, and when they see massing, they start massing over the battlefield because they know that means there's going to be an infantry attack. So
Yeah, we get some great world building on this
Yeah.
war.
exactly, and I think Skaro needs it. People keep trying to bring in lore about the Time War. I want to hear more about the war on Skaro because
Yeah.
it's
I think-
horrific.
That's one of the strengths of Nicholas Briggs writing this because,
Hmm.
he knows so much about Daleks and
Yeah,
stuff. That
I mean, he's
lore he writes is him just, fleshing out and expanding a project he's been working on decades.
He just is the Daleks at
Yeah.
this point. He is the number one expert in the Daleks. I mean, I wish he'd give some of the rest of us a go, but
All members of Dalek Elite have now been subjected to mutagenic pulse.
Oh, good. Yeah, stay there. Travel machines 2 to 7 are already on their way to you with scooper uppers.
I obey.
Lamarius and R4 get caught by a coloured patrol.
yeah.
And they're like, throw down your weapon. And she sets it to detonate and throws it at them. And she's like, yep, here it is.
Yeah. Duck. What? Duck.
Yeah, her and R4 hit the deck and it blows up. And
And then they use them to try and trick their way into the Khaled bunker where Davros is, where the Master is, where Sorvad is.
and it's so awesome because the Master sees like the security footage, like, what? There's people at the gates. And he's like, oh, that Khaled patrol are nearly dead because they've been, blown up. He's like, oh, get them in here.
Yes,
'Cause-
yes, more
'cause
Daleks.
He's like, I'm about to increase my
Was it about to increase my army by 20%?
yeah, with like a patrol. Like, yeah, he's just like, wounded men, get them in here.
That was a freebie.
Yeah. And so now Lamarius is inside and she can confront him.
Yes. And yeah, they're going around that she takes an ID tag off a corpse, which R4 does not like. He does not like that at all. And then a Dalek turns up and shoots R4 with its mutagenic
Yeah.
ray, which all it does is send him werewolf again. And then the story kind of, like, we find out that the Master starts talking to Lamarius and says that Lamarius has been mutated by the radiation in the building. And they're just sort of talking, basically. Then it cuts back to Gallifrey, and suddenly Narvin and Livia keep jumping between, like, their minds keep jumping between dimensions. Basically, like, time has been changed.
Yeah.
Time is being changed around. They call it foreshocks. Like, he hasn't quite done the thing that's going to change things yet, but because he's on the way to doing it, bits of it are
There's no
spreading out.
determined fixed point in that bit of history. So Narvin calls it like Mayfly moments or something in
Like-
that time is living and dying really quick because it doesn't know
what it's going to be.
what the determined future is, which is a really cool. So they look out the window and they see different.
Like the mountain
things.
at one point is just a giant carved Dalek.
Yeah,
And so like they know that like the universe, as far as they're concerned, is sort of unraveling. Like they don't know what it's going to be yet.
yeah. And Arvin says that either these fixed, like these new realities are going to become true,
Mhm.
or they won't. They'll just die, and the real, what they previously had will stay fixed.
I do love the line, "Oh, I was somewhere else," and meaning it very, very specifically. Yes, I was literally somewhere else.
Yeah, and Livia has the thing, and she's like, "Oh God, we might not even know when, because if time changes and reality changes,
Oh yeah,
we might not know when that happens.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
we'll change."
Yeah, exactly.
It's quite a scary.
Yeah,
moment.
and that's really playing with time travel, isn't it? I love it when Doctor Who actually properly plays with time travel and shows that, yeah, in some cases, like, if your personal history has changed, you won't know.
Yeah,
You won't know. Things will happen. And, like, they're only noticing that things are happening because, well, they're Time Lords and they're time sensitive. But the thing is, if the history of Gallifrey changes, how would they know? They would just out of existence.
yeah. And it's all Narvan's fault.
It is all Narvan's fault. And that's where we're left. That's where we're left at the end of those 2 episodes.
Well, he does. Livia
Lamarius.
has a last thing where I can't remember what it is. He promises her something. He offers her a deal.
Oh, that's easy. I can fix that.
Yeah. Oh, your family? Yeah. I can spare them or I can save them. That's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, okay. And she goes through with it. And he's like, oh no.
Mm.
No, they're dead. They've been dead a long time. I'm not saving them.
Yeah.
And she just goes mental, like just a mental breakdown, just absolutely beside herself, crying. And I think.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, sorry. He sends her back to Gallifrey, doesn't he? Like, he says, I'm not going to help you. And then he sends her back to Gallifrey and she's been mutated. And Gallifrey is crumbling.
Yeah.
The Master has won at this point.
Yeah.
Like, he has won. And that's the end of, like, our first part of that. Like, I can tell you our second part has not just the Time Lords are upset with how things are going. The Daleks are also, like, the Daleks of the Time War are also pissed that their personal history is changing.
Yes. I mean, wouldn't you be? Davros, I feel, is way more controllable than the Master as your leader.
Yeah, yeah.
Because, the Daleks are Davros's children, his creations, and the Master.
They've got let's face it, they've not got a great relationship.
From Davros's perspective,
yeah.
they are
So,
his.
so let's look at Davros for a second. Every single story in the classic series that featured Davros, all but one of them, which is Genesis of the Daleks were trying to kill him. The Daleks don't want him anymore. They don't want him around.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, no, in Destiny of the Daleks, they only wanted him to break the stalemate with the Movellans.
Yes.
And in Revelation of the Daleks, the Daleks definitely wanted him dead.
Well, probably easier to kill than the Master.
Yeah, I dare say. I mean, you say that, but Davros keeps coming back.
That's true, but we all know the king of coming back is.
Yes, the Master. Yeah. I wouldn't. Davros wouldn't make it in a gold tooth.
No, he
Just
wouldn't.
sitting in a gold tooth.
We've got to remember that I guess both of them are very patient characters, although Davros against his will because he gets frozen and things like that.
Yeah.
But the Master has just got that, I'll wait. Put me in a golden tooth? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll
I got
wait.
nothing better to do.
Yeah.
All hail the creator of the Daleks! All hail the Master! All hail me!
Derek Jacobi. We've talked a lot about Derek
Oh,
Jacobi.
yeah.
He's brilliant in this. He really gets the plotting and the planning of it. I don't think you could get any other Master to do
Like I
this
said,
story.
so dramatic in this episode.
Mm.
Just the plotting and playing Narvan up. Like, I think it's one of those things of it's fun to wind him up. In the same way Missy loved winding the monk up. This Master loves winding Narvan up. Because we've seen them together before in
Yep.
at the end of Kalos when he delivered the Sueño to Narvan.
What you have to remember, right, about how these things are. Master of Kalos takes place after this.
Which is incredible.
It's incredible. The Master has done all of this and still Narvan is willing to work with him if it helps win the Time War.
Yeah.
Like, Narvan is very much like win at any cost, even if that means working with the Master.
Yeah, and this master, it feels like, uses that to his advantage and knows how, like we said, chess. If Narvan's the other opposite color, he knows how to set up pieces and then walk across the board. Like, he absolutely knows what to do, what to push.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why I suppose the Gallifrey audios are so great, because, you know, he works for the CIA, which means that he's doing all the little precise things. Which is why, again, like when the Time War Gallifrey stuff comes up and the War Room resurrect Rassilon, and Narvan's like, I wouldn't have dared do that.
Yeah, even that for me is too much. So this is fun because this, although I would like to say it feels like an equal match, it kind of isn't, because the Master really did walk all over Narvan, which is, you know, the danger of Time Lords like the Doctor and the Master.
Yeah.
Is that Gallifrey's best just don't even stack up. They don't compete. These others just waltz in and do whatever they want, really. They know how to twist the bureaucracy and stuff as well without having to really get involved politically. Should
also point out, it is said very pointedly in this story that this is Narvan's final regeneration.
Yes. He says that himself, like crying in that little tent thing.
Yeah.
It's funny because they're on the side of a pyramid and I wanted to be like, or is it a ziggurat? I thought you might like to know that the cover art of the Planet of Doom
does
quite clearly show that it's a pyramid.
Yep. Yeah, it does. Come on, guys.
But I think the Master will meet his match.
Yes.
Maybe next time.
In part 2, yes.
Okay, Ciarán, were you attending carefully?
I honestly think I was this time.
We're only going to do, I think, a small 3-question one, since it's a 2-parter.
Okay.
And then we'll do...
Yeah, sure.
3 the next time as well. All right, what does the Master address the Time Lords as in his dying speech?
Friends, brothers and sisters of Gallifrey?
Yeah.
Yep.
Which I love, because never in his life.
No.
But it's in the speech, oh, brothers and sisters of Gallifrey, this is my... You're like, I'd be suspicious from that point. You'd be like, no. He doesn't call us that.
This is a final plea to you all. Death is... eating my soul.
Which leads me to my next question. What does the Master call Narvan when he reveals his disguise?
Oh, God, I really thought I was paying attention. No.
A dullard.
A dullard!
Oh, my dear Narvin, you're such a dullard.
Not even like an amazing insult.
No,
just
no.
revealing herself and being like, you dullard, Narvan. Fucking got you. All right, last one. The Master describes the experimental supply store as...
toy chest? No. Oh, God, I don't know.
Closest thing to a natural history museum on Skaro.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
You know this place, of course, Elrond.
It's the experimental supply store.
The closest thing on Skaro to a natural history museum.
Yeah, no, that was terrible. I have some great quotes here.
Yes.
Oh, actually, you know what? I've got one for you.
Sure.
Yeah. What does Kraslus have in his bag of tricks that he uses?
When?
When him and the Master are together.
Oh, I know there's something, but I don't know what it is.
It's an etheric beam locator. Which, if you remember your Curse of Fatal Death, is a Dalek bump.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. There's a great line. Adapt or get off the pot.
Yes, I did love that.
And the great line when the Master is walking and Elrond's like, oh, you can walk. And he's just like, yeah, no, I didn't need that.
Yeah.
But he did say, I did stub my toe on some rubble after the explosion. He says at one point that people are clucking around like frightened hens.
the MVP quote has to go to, "Don't breathe all over me, Narvin."
Yeah.
There are things I do in the prosecution of this war.
Oh, please don't breathe all over me, Narvin. I am your president.
Wonderful. Okay, Amber, what have we learned?
That the Master is unscrupulous at just like messing with the timeline to
Yeah.
get what he wants.
I think this is a Time War story.
Yeah.
And this is showing the Master has seen the Time War and has seen that you can just fuck with time.
Yeah, well, this isn't his first or last attempt, because we see a lot of his time. He's the War Master, obviously.
Yeah.
We see a lot of his attempts to end the war or to help the war effort. And I mean, I know that I think one of our personal favorite stories is his final attempt to end the war once and for all.
Yes.
And it just, the result of that.
Which leads directly into Utopia.
Yeah. So it's fantastic seeing how hard he tries, although this one feels like, forget it, I'm not going to try and end the war. I'm just going to try and make it the best for me.
Yes.
Like, I'm just going to come out on top. Forget either side.
Yeah, it's as if he's like, but the thing is, like, you look at his plans before now, and they've always been like grand plans, but nothing. Like, he has never done anything like this. He has never done anything on this scale, this devastating scale. And I think it is because he is in the Time War, and he has seen that you can do things like this and get away with them because the Time Lords are already doing it.
Yeah, and he is the War Master, born into the Time War. This is all he has done as this regeneration is just stuff, and this is one of his big.
I'd like to get the story where McQueen regenerates into the War Master in the Time War.
Yeah,
because the Time War doesn't really have a definitive start.
Yeah.
We do have an audio that is the closest we can get to the start of the Time War, and that's an Eighth Doctor story where the Time War sort of crashes in on the Eighth Doctor's timeline.
The Master understands who Narvin is and how to twist him to get what he wants and to use him.
Absolutely.
That this Master is just, I think someone even in the audio describes him as just calculating.
Yes.
Just understands the precise sequencing of things to do.
Absolutely.
To get what he wants. And I love the marrying of that to just the dramaticness of what we know of the Master. How Derek Jacobi brings both those two characteristics into the one character. I think when I was listening to this, I was like, this is my favorite Master.
Yeah, yeah.
When I listened to him, the way his voice is so
We've said it before.
perfect. Yeah, he's my favorite. He has to be. He's just perfect, I feel, in this. I love him.
Because he's got the perfect blend, hasn't he? I mean, he's cold, he's calculating, he can be ruthless, he can be terrifying, but he can also be incredibly funny.
Yes.
He has a really good streak of humor. And look, I think this all comes down to his box sets all have amazing writing.
Yeah.
And amazing direction. Call me.
Okay. We learn about some lore about, like, as we've already discussed, Skaro, the Khaleds, the Thralls, and about, like, the Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
We've learned about all their lore.
Mm-hmm.
Just, building on those small details about things.
Yeah, this story is a very referential story that you will appreciate a lot more if you know where these things are coming from.
Yeah, I think you'd struggle without knowing some of those things.
Yeah.
Or it would just be new information that you were getting.
Yeah, exactly. But you're right, it builds really wonderfully. And this, like, as we've said, this point in time, like, it's the main touchstone for Doctor Who. We've had a whole Unbound, like, 2 box sets where the Fourth Doctor made the opposite choice.
Yeah.
It's interesting, isn't it? We haven't actually talked much about the Daleks in this story. I think we'll probably talk about them more next time. But
we talked about the Khaleds becoming them.
This is true. But yeah, so in this series of what we're doing, the Master versus the Daleks, talking about is the Master or the Daleks the greater villain. The fact that this is the touchstone, that this is, if the Daleks did or did not get created, it would have huge ramifications for the universe. We haven't got a story of what if there wasn't the Master. It would be interesting.
Yeah, that would be interesting. I like that this story took the idea of what if the Daleks never got created and was just like, no, what if the Master created the Daleks?
Yeah.
That's what this whole story is, that obviously.
Yeah.
But it's just that slight twist on an idea we've had before, but it's still really interesting and believable.
Because, I mean, the Master has tried to control the Daleks before, and I think he's realized that the only... Although, that's the thing, not having listened to the last two parts in a while, I can't actually remember what happens, just the broad strokes. But that's the thing, like, we've talked about how the Daleks treat Davros. Does the Master think that he can control the Daleks by creating them? But that didn't work for Davros.
Yeah.
They didn't listen to Davros.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see because, as you say, it's been years. I also cannot remember the second half of this. And will he have built in something that means that they can't disobey him? Like, will the hypnosis come into play or things like that? Because we see him hypnotize one of the Khaleds in this.
Yeah, exactly. The Dalek number 1, or Elrond. I can't believe that you don't find that weird.
Nope.
Okay.
If anything, I draw a closer conclusion to when I first heard of it. I was like, oh, that's kind of like the kid from the Jetsons, Elroy.
Okay. Okay. Like, pop culture works on different people in different ways. It's fine. I personally couldn't stop imagining him as... I
it's
just couldn't
a
stop seeing him
name
as
for
Hugo
me.
Weaving.
It's just a name for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like...
to be honest, I also thought about the founder of Scientology.
L. Ron Hubbard, yeah, okay. But, like, okay, if you were reading or, like, watching Lord of the Rings and there was a character called Narvin, would you not think of this, Doctor Who?
Probably not.
Okay. Look, okay, I'm obviously weird.
Deaths.
Oh, yeah, what's the death count now?
3.
That we know of. I mean, I think he makes a lot more.
The
Daleks.
dragon, Kraslus, and the security guard who he kills for their ID.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Most kind.
You know, it's a miracle you survived that.
Yes. The first of many miracles, I hope.
The first of... What?
The first of many.
That's all for this week's episode of Please Attend Carefully. Thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to tune in for part 2 next week. We hope that with each new episode you come to understand, appreciate, and maybe even obey the Master. Don't forget to follow or subscribe to be updated on new episodes. Amber, how can listeners get in contact with us?
Well, they can follow us on Instagram at Please Attend Carefully. They can follow us on Tumblr at Please Attend Carefully. Or, if you're Scott Hancock, why not email Ciarán at pleaseattendcarefully@gmail.com.
My script says that's right. As of this series, you can also find our episodes on YouTube. And we now have a Patreon featuring exclusive subscriber content with tiers starting at just $2. I've been Ciarán.
I'm Amber. We'll leave you with a clue for next week's episode.
We hope you'll be tuning in. After all, it can't hurt you to listen, can it?
$10,000 years. Yay! It's party time.